Against all the odds, Arsenal have beaten Tottenham by 1-0, and in this video we are going to be diving into the defensive display that saw the Gunners see off their North London rivals and the goal that allowed them to seal all 3 points in another North London derby. With missing their main creator in Martin Odegaard and their defensive midfield powerhouse in Declan Rice, Arsenal needed to change tactic when facing Tottenham this time around, and it was very much a case, like some of the other big matches that they played, of defence being the most important priority, keeping teams out. After only conceding 1 goal this season in the Premier League, Arsenal looked to try and nullify Tottenham, and they did that in a number of different ways. And the game ended up panning out very much like this, very much in Arsenal's half, with Tottenham dominating possession. Tottenham ended the game with 64% of the ball, but it's what they didn't manage to do with it that I want to really focus on. Because of the way that Tottenham go forward, very gung-ho, very attacking, Arsenal needed to have a number of different tactics to allow them to really bed themselves into the game. Of course, we know how strong their back four is. Jurrien Timber coming in at left back was a standout for me, but I wanted to focus on the midfield pairing. Partey and Jorginho, in almost a double pivot role, operated in different facilities. Now, when Havertz and Trossard, who were in the centre of the pitch, managed to go forwards and try to pressurise Van de Ven and Romero, in not necessarily pressing, but more of obstructing the passing lanes, Jorginho would then push on to Bentancur. This forced Maddison to then drop a little bit deeper, and it meant that the centre of the pitch was very much a no-go zone for Tottenham. And even when they did get through into this channel, there was Thomas Partey to be able to be aggressive again, and also Gabriel and William Saliba, which then forced Tottenham out into the wings. But one really crucial thing that people need to remember about this Arsenal side is that they are very, very hard working. Bukayo Saka and Martinelli did thankless and just unbelievably unselfish tasks for the Gunners in this game, doubling up on both Heung-min Son and Brennan Johnson. And because the way that Tottenham like to play with Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie inside, making those runs in between the fullbacks and the centre-backs, what ended up happening is that Saka would then follow those runs occasionally, Martinelli would follow those runs occasionally, and once again it would prevent Tottenham from being able to play through the Gunners. One also interesting thing that happened was the role of Thomas Partey. If we take a look at Arsenal's average positions, I want you to focus on Thomas Partey right here. Now, he dropped so deep on occasion that it turned Arsenal looking to be something of a back three. Now, we know that they didn't play a back three, but let's just talk about this role for a second, because this is where I think Arteta's masterclass really does come in. Notice the position of Jorginho, and then notice the position of Thomas Partey. Not only did Jorginho be the aggressor on a number of occasions in the centre of the park, this prevented Tottenham from playing through the centre of Arsenal, but Thomas Partey dropped a little bit deeper, and this allowed and freed up William Saliba and Gabriel to be able to split. So when you have Thomas Partey occupying this aerial position right here, you've got Saliba who's able to come and cover with White, and Gabriel who's able to cover with Timber, and this means that the runs that Tottenham would usually make through in between fullback and centre-back, they weren't there. And it just stopped and halted Tottenham on so many different occasions. I think this highlights Arsenal's defensive approach pretty perfectly. So, we have Tottenham on the left-hand side of the pitch, attacking Arsenal's right. We have Heung-min Son with the ball, but what I want you to really focus on are the positions of Arsenal's 2 midfielders. This is one of them in Jorginho, and this is the other in Thomas Partey. Now, what do you also notice? You notice that William Saliba and Gabriel are very far apart. And what Arsenal, and I think Mikel Arteta really noticed in this scenario, is due to the way that Tottenham players like to go forwards and occupy these channels right here, Arsenal needed to do something about it. And the answer was to have their centre-backs be really aggressive once they came into these zones. Once this happened, they knew there was going to be space in these areas right here in the centre of the park, so they dropped their 2 defensive midfielders into central positions. This gave Saliba and Gabriel the ability to not only attack the opposition players in Tottenham who would occupy those spaces, but it also enabled them to be able to do this. And this is Gabriel onto Dominic Solanke. Now, occasionally Solanke moved on to Saliba, occasionally he moved on to Gabriel, but a lot of the times you saw this. And while Solanke did quite well against Saliba in the start of the game, later on down the line, you saw the Arsenal setup really start to get to grips with it. And it was because of this, the additional players in the box preventing the cross from going in. And then you've got the aggression from William Saliba right here, who was able to then challenge James Maddison the moment he gets the ball. We follow this on, and we've got Maddison right here with the ball. And you've got Saliba on him here. You've got Gabriel marking here. And what have you got in the centre of the park? Well, you've got an absolutely free reign, free territory for Jorginho and Thomas Partey to be able to win any kind of aerial duel because they're not being challenged. You got Bukayo Saka ready to come and close down Maddison as well. It was defensively fantastic from Arsenal. James Maddison is able to then try to cross the ball, but look at this. You got 1, you got 2, you got 3. You've got no Tottenham player who's making a darting run anymore. You've got no Tottenham player occupying any kind of aerial presence. You've only got Dominic Solanke at the back post, and while he does manage to get a header off from this situation, it's not really ever going to go in because of the angle, because of the area, and because of the defensive presence that Arsenal have. Remember, this is the most dangerous area in between the sticks, and nobody's there. They're looking towards the back post, but again, what have you got? 1 marked, 2 marked. Defensively, Arsenal were brilliant. When they eventually did go down the wings, it was all about the cross. And then what have you got? You've got crosses going into William Saliba, who's an aerial monster, Thomas Partey, who's very good in the air, and Gabriel. These three mopped up nearly everything, and if they didn't, it always ran through, it always was overhit, underhit, it was dealt with continuously. Then you're wondering about the duels between Ben White and Urian Timber. They won those against Brennan Johnson and Heung-min Son, and Tottenham had no way forwards. A lot of the time, you found Tottenham recycling, going back through Van de Ven, through Romero, and they just didn't have any ideas. They were scratching their heads, and it was because nearly every single avenue that Arsenal tried to occupy, they won. Tottenham couldn't go through the middle. Tottenham failed to go through the wings. And then when you're talking about crossing the ball, you had this to deal with from an Arsenal perspective. Saliba, Partey and Gabriel. A defensive masterclass from Arsenal throughout the entire game. And then when they got on the ball and had those turnovers, you've then got the likes of Bukayo Saka to be able to run forwards. You've got Martinelli to be able to run forwards. You've got Trossard and Havertz. Now, these four always had an option to go above and beyond. Occasionally you saw David Raya kicking long. Occasionally you saw Gabriel or Timber playing through those flanks. And then when they got to the latter stages of the game, you had the likes of Raheem Sterling coming on, Gabriel Jesus. There was always space in behind Tottenham's back four. Always space in those channels. And occasionally Van de Ven would need to do some miracle work, but oftentimes you had Martinelli who had a very good chance, and it was all given by the fact that Tottenham needed to commit so many bodies forwards because Arsenal was so good defensively. Tottenham ended up not finding a way through, and Arsenal got all 3 points. It truly was defensively brilliant, and it was down to the individual roles and responsibilities that Mikel Arteta gave his side. Fantastic. Finally, before we wrap up, let's take a look at the goal. Now, before a ball is even kicked, Bukayo Saka is just beginning his run-up right here. I want to notice a couple of things. Number one, look at the amount of aggressive plays that are happening in this area right here. Look at this. So, number one, you've got Ben White tussling with James Maddison. You've got Van de Ven, who's currently tussling with William Saliba. You've got Kai Havertz, who's being marked by Brennan Johnson. That's a big red flag right there. But also, on the edge, you've got a 1v1 between Romero and Gabriel. Now, I think both sides will be pretty happy with this. But what happens later down the line, and one of the reasons why I think Tottenham are so susceptible, and one of the reasons why I think Arsenal is so good, is the aggression that Arsenal have and the lack of aggression that Tottenham have. And now, normally you'd assume that Romero would be really aggressive, really touch tight with Gabriel, but he misses and loses his man. If we follow it on, we can see that he's now ball watching. He doesn't know where Gabriel is. He has no idea, and Gabriel now has a free run. And what Gabriel does, arguably a little bit cheekily, but also quite clever, is he moves Romero just out the way, just to touch. And what have you still got? You've got players here in Tottenham who aren't able to attack the ball. Maybe Solanke, maybe, but it goes over his head. But apart from that, you've got players who are really congested. Vicario, because of the hustle and bustle in front of him, cannot go and challenge for the ball. He cannot go and catch. And that means that it's all on Romero right here to deal with the situation. Now, because of this, because Gabriel is far too aggressive, when you've got the ball whipped in, you're asking who's going to win this header, who wants it more, and in the end, obviously, Gabriel managed to get his head on it. He's about to leap. He's got a free header. Let's take a look at that. He has a free header. Look at this. He's not being challenged. He's not being challenged by Romero. And Romero turns and he realizes, oh, I've been done. It's too late. It's too over. He can foul him, but that would be a penalty. And in the end, it was just brilliantly worked. And Arsenal are fantastic at doing this. The aggression, and more importantly, the lack of aggression from Tottenham is the thing that really separated both of these sides. Arsenal were defensively brilliant. They were fantastic. Gabriel gets his header, and Arsenal win by 1-0. But it's the aggression, the defensive stability, and their ability on and off the ball to be cohesive as a unit. Arsenal were fantastic, and look at what it means to them. Arsenal fans, I want you to let me know what you think in the comment section below. For me, it was a fantastic performance, and I think you should be very, very proud of your side. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.